since you've been filming for so long and you document a lot of your life, how has your relationship to filming your life kind of evolved with you?
Well, I've been doing it since I started filmmaking when I got out of college. So the question is, I think more is, how do those around me, how have they adapted to this? As I've said before, film gives the impression that I never have without the camera, which is not the case. I do have a life, but you know, it's intrusive. I mean, it can be very intrusive. It's just, I try to be direct with people. I try, and I never try to make fun of them. So that's more the way I confront the issue is the people who I'm shoving my camera at. How are they taking it?
Have you ever had really bad reactions to starting to film someone?
From his wife.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, my wife really gets fed up with it after a while. But she's really very tolerant of it too, so it's a mixture. I catch her in bad moments.
How do you feel about your own mortality?
I feel it hurrying near. I feel, you know, as I think I said earlier, that I very much feel that spinning dial of things that could hit you at any moment, because I see it. So I see people getting hit around me so much more frequently than was the case 10 years ago. But this is not new. I mean, I've been thinking about getting old since I was 40. That was probably the Rubicon. Right? Cross that.
That spinning wheel you had, I've had that since I was 10. Of the disasters.
Sort of a motif of supportiveness from your father, the carpenter, making
Take the mic.
sorry, I'm not quiet.
People in the back.
Oh, okay. There's sort of a motif of supportiveness from your father, the carpenter, making your film studio, to your son, the chaplain, and all that, and just only the merest hints of toxicity in your life. And I'm just wondering to what extent you felt you were kind of purifying the space to allow for the meditation, or if that's really the quality of your life.
So are you feeling that I've sort of set aside the darkness?
No, you should be.
I mean, I hope it's clear in the film that I feel incredibly lucky. Do I have dark moments? Sure. Why weren't they included in the film? I think it's because we worried a lot about the film not being a downer. You know, as Jack says early in the film, you know, it's already, you know, a film about sickness and aging and mortality. You know, don't hammer us into the ground about it. You know, what can we do with that? I mean, we tried to make it balanced. I hope there's not. I mean, but it's an interesting question. Not enough darkness in there.
It wasn't really so much dark
But
versus light as evil versus good.
We had hundreds of hours of material to work with, and there were some downers that aren't in the movie and some fun moments that aren't in the movie, and maybe Ralph just didn't turn on his camera, but in all of those hundreds of hours that I watched, there was no toxicity. There's bickering and tragedy, but there's always a kind of warmth with this community of people. The family, the friends, the neighbors, the Iranian man pulling the tire, the the look is pretty extreme and special.
I mean, I guess I also feel there's plenty of films about the evil in the world. I don't need to add to that. That wasn't the goal of this.
In the back, you were raising your hand earlier?
So I guess you just answered what was going to be my question about, it was interesting because it seems like the pandemic happened right in the middle of your filming, if I've got my years right, and you know, the world and all that, and you chose, it seems very background in terms of the COVID itself, maybe because here in New York it seems so much more present all the time. So my question was that because you were in the country, or was that intentional that wasn't something you wanted to focus so much on?
As I just said earlier today, we really struggled with the idea of having any COVID in the film at all, because it would date it. You always have to be careful about, you know, if you want your film to, you know, have any relevance beyond a few years, you have to be careful about date stamping it with specific events. But finally, we felt that there was no way to avoid it. But we certainly weren't going to feature it. It was not going to be the center of the film.
So I'm interested in your time in Senegal and beyond the monkey and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
How might that have influenced how you look at mortality and all of that? I have a connection to West Africa also.
Well, I loved my time there, but I couldn't tell you how it's affected my sense of mortality because, again, I was not in a stressed area. I was not in a part of Africa that, I mean, you know, people weren't rich, but and I wasn't in Dakar, the capital city, where you see where there are a lot of stress conditions. I was out. I was in the Casamance.
Not so much stress, but people, in 2 years, people live and die and, you know, they get born and they die in a different way.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, the Peace Corps was an important part of my experience, but I don't feel I brought a lot of that into the film. I don't know if you feel that way. Yeah, I guess it's probably not universal enough that a lot of people could relate to it who haven't done it, I think.
Very true.
Yeah.
So you said that you've been considering your own mortality since you were 40, and I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your motivation for making the film. Were you looking to hear from your friends, like you were wrestling with questions, you wanted to know if you were alone, you were looking for other ideas of what's to come, like kind of like what were you seeking in kind of asking all these questions of the people of your life, and did you hear what you expected?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering how it, you know, in your everyday interactions, you know, mine with my friends, outside of groaning about our various medical ailments, we're not really talking about mortality. I mean, you don't. Normal daily conversation usually doesn't stimulate this kind of conversation. But if you point a camera at people and really ask them, you know, well, how are you thinking about this? It changes. And that goes along with the question that was asked earlier about you know, what's the value of talking to your relatives about their growing up and their experiences. It just